I have sat down to record this type of video several times now and never really got the focus that I wanted out of it. I didn't think it was worth uploading. I think I finally got it down now, so we're going to give this another try. This video is mainly about why I left my professional career as a mental health therapist in order to work at a local game shop. For those of you that don't know, that aren't super familiar with the channel, I was a therapist that worked primarily with substance use disorders and psychosis. A very difficult population for sure. And it was eventually burnout that got to me. You do have a lot of clients that are ordered to go to therapy that don't actually want to be there. Or in the case of psychoses, they don't know why they're there and they don't really understand what's happening to them. So it's very difficult to work with those individuals. But those were the populations I enjoyed working with most because they were challenging. The burnout came more from the mental health care system and the healthcare system as a whole in America. It's very frustrating to deal with from the outside, but also very frustrating to have to work within. And I could go on any number of tangents, but basically I got very burned out with the type of management that was going on within the facilities I was working, with the unprofessionalism of like coworkers and supervisors, and just the ability to actually help people being limited by the healthcare system. So I was experiencing a lot of burnout. I was talking with my clinical supervisor at the time and kind of going through all these things, trying to figure out what I could do to mend all this stuff as I went. And throughout all of this process, over these years of working within this industry, I was getting very depressed. My own mental health was taking hits because of the amount of time I was spending in the office, the amount of time I was spending on trying to figure out these alternative treatment modalities and filing the correct paperwork to actually help people, to actually get them services that they deserved and needed from a system that was not set up to support them at all. So doing a lot of this, it got very hard to leave that stuff at the office. Even as a therapist, I practice a lot of what I preach. I'm big on practicing, acceptance, utilizing meditation, mindfulness. All of these things were no longer working for me the way that they used to in managing my own mental health. And a big part of it was the environment that I was seemingly stuck in every day. Throughout all of this, the depression comes back. For those of you that haven't dealt with major depression, you reach a point where you don't enjoy anything, nothing brings you joy, and you have to basically yank yourself out of that with willpower. You have to start forcing yourself to do things that you enjoy just to see if you'll enjoy them again. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but one of the few things I was finding is, I love Pokemon. I love trading card games across the board. And I hadn't played Magic in a very long time. I, had been collecting Pokemon. I'd been building vintage decks for this channel, but I hadn't really been playing a lot. I hadn't really been diving into the community like I really wanted to be. And when I started doing that, I started realizing like, oh yeah, these are my only little pockets of like happiness. This is where I feel most fulfilled. This is where I feel purposeful. And it was hard to reconcile that, to be like, yeah, this career where my main goal is to try to help people better their lives, to give them the tools that they can utilize to be better. That wasn't fulfilling for me anymore. It wasn't doing it. It wasn't purposeful. And as bad as it sounds, to be frank, it felt like I was wasting time at that job because I spent more time trying to work around and deal with the environment itself rather than getting hands-on with clients and providing them with those tools. So again, it wasn't the client base. I love the field of psychology. I enjoyed being a therapist, but to be a therapist and actually do your job, to do what you want to do, you have to jump through so many hoops with the facilities you work for, with the healthcare system as a whole. It's very frustrating, and that's what was basically pulling me away from what I wanted to actually be doing, what was actually fulfilling for me. But I found that returning to these communities of Pokemon, of Magic, of even like Digimon, I picked up Digimon in that time and started learning how to play it. That felt good. That's where I felt like the best version of myself. And that's when I started thinking about leaving the professional field that I was in order to pursue something else. At the time, I didn't know if it was opening my own game shop and just, trying to be an entrepreneur without a lot of experience there, or even just like doing a small online business, buying and selling through TCG Player and trying to make a living that way. Because this, as a therapist, I made a decent salary, I had great benefits, and so I would be walking away from all of that to take a huge life risk. And I was very privileged to be in a situation where I could do that, and I realized that. So I don't want anyone to take away that the lesson from this vlog is to just quit your job and go do what makes you happy. No, there are risks associated with it, and you do need to make sure you're taking care of yourself and that you're going to be in a good position either way. But like I said, I was privileged in already making enough money to where I could hold a bunch back and make sure I was going to be okay moving into something totally new. And so leaving that position, I applied to comic shops and LGSs, and one day there was just open interviews at this game shop that I enjoyed going to. So I walked in there, got hired on the spot, and kind of just hit the ground running. I'd worked retail before. I actually really like the world of retail just because of how busy you get to be, moving around a lot, interacting with a lot of different people, and especially at an LGS, you get to interact with all of these communities that I was missing, that I had been missing out on for a long time. Actually having people sit down at tables to play paper Magic, paper Pokemon, people getting excited about Digimon, One Piece, Flesh and Blood, all of these areas that I got excited about. And from there, like I said, I started learning all of these different aspects of the job, learning to run tournaments, to, basically relearning Yu-Gi-Oh! Since I hadn't played it since 2008. It's very exciting and it's very fun. And there, I was happy. I was excited to go into work every day, which is something I hadn't experienced in a long time either. There were still some doubts about had I made the right choice. I walked away from a higher paying job with better benefits to basically indulge myself and be selfish to just do something I enjoyed. So yeah, I had those lingering doubts, and there was one evening where a guy brought in just a big bulk Pokemon trade. He was wanting to sell to the shop for some store credit, and I was looking through it. That's one of my favorite things to do at this job, is to just sort through people's collections and buy those collections for the shop. I was looking through all this stuff. There's a lot of Delta species, a lot of like Dragon Frontiers cards. I was sorting through this, like play sets of Holon transceivers, Holon research, the whole Holon engine. And I was talking to this guy. I was like, man, you are bringing back some nostalgia. This is the era where I was playing the most. This is when I was in high school. Me and my friends we would travel around the state, going to all these locals, state championships in Richmond and stuff. And he said, "Oh yeah, me too. Same thing around the same time. Me and my best friend, we would help each other build decks, and we would play test and go around to all these events too." And I asked the guy, I was like, "Oh yeah, what's your name? I probably played against you several times if we were doing this at the same time." And he told me his name, and I said, "Holy shit, I remember you. I did play against you a lot. You were at a ton of these events." The very first event that me and my friends went to, the one that got us started on playing Pokemon, outside our own little circle and actually going to these events, you were there. You're the first person my best friend ever played against at one of those events. And, I was talking about it, and I was saying, yeah, I remember you and James Arnold we're always at these events, and I hated playing against you guys because you were so good. And he paused and he goes, that was my best friend. That's the guy that helped me build decks that, we play tested together. And James Arnold is a a decently big name in Pokemon still. Like, he's still in the game. Even when he shows up to like big regional events and stuff, they still refer to him as the player from Kentucky. And I love seeing him show up at events because he's a damn good player. And he always does really creative things with decks. But and I was telling this guy, I was like, yeah, James Arnold's, he's still in the game. He's still out there doing the thing. And it became kind of emotional. Like, for me, buying cards from this guy and also the guy that was selling the cards. And I think that's when like the final little doubts left my mind about what I was doing, because that reminded me of how important this hobby it is to me, just like as an individual, and how important it is to a lot of people. I ended up buying the guy's collection for the shop. He had so much cool stuff in there, and he had brought all of this stuff in with the cards, including this deck box, this Torterra deck box that I believe was like a Pokemon Center exclusive back in the day. I don't quite remember, but at the end of it, he said, like, this turned out to mean way more than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was just coming here to sell cards. I didn't know I was going to meet someone like you, and he gave me this deck box to keep, and ever since that day, it has been up on my shelf, up the collection shelf you see right behind me. You may have seen it in other videos, but that's the reminder to myself that I'm doing what's important to me. And like I said, I don't have kids, I don't have a family, and so I don't have other needs to put before that. Like, I'm in a privileged position to where I can be selfish and just pursue a career that is meaningful to me, that doesn't even feel like work. This is a job that I love going into every day. I like showing up and just being surrounded by things that I love, by trading cards, anime figures, old consoles. It's great. It's a great experience, and I guess that's part of the reason I wanted to do this video, is to provide some encouragement, I guess, to other people that have dealt with depression, because it's daily maintenance, and if you don't do that maintenance, then it can get overwhelming. And then it took me a long time to get to the point where I am able to manage. I've been dealing with depression since I was around age 15. I'm 32 now at the time of recording this video. It was just last year that I decided to make that career change. So at 31, I said, screw it. I don't want to work in this field anymore. I want to work in a field that I'm going to enjoy. And it was tough for the people I worked with too, clients I had that were like, well, I don't want to get a new therapist. I like you. You're good at your job. My clinical supervisor was telling me, like, I don't want to lose you. You're one of the few, good therapists left in public healthcare. There's a lot of therapists that do private therapy, and they bill on their own, but those are typically for individuals that don't necessarily need therapy. Within the field, we kind of call those the weekly weepies, where it's just like people that can afford therapy but don't necessarily have to have therapy. They just show up as like, my husband doesn't talk to me as much as I want. That's the type of issues they have, whereas public healthcare, public mental health care is more of, this person has been in jail upteenth times for substance use. They've OD'd and died and had to be revived multiple times. Like, very serious, like, no, this person needs some changes in their life somewhere. But again, I'm trying to keep myself from going on tangents there. The other part of the video, aside from depression, is manageable and it's normal for most people. But it's also, if you have the opportunity to start expanding beyond yourself, if you're unhappy with where you're at in your life, you absolutely have the power to, maybe not drastically, quit your job and be in the wind for a while until you find what you like. But, if your passions are Pokemon or TCGs or collectibles, whatever brought you to this channel, pursue those as much as possible. Even if it's just, starting buying and selling on TCG, even if it's just, setting up an Etsy store to, make stuff and be creative and profit from that creativity. Whatever you find that brings meaning to your life, dive into it as much as your life will allow. I know there's limited time, there's limited resources, people are limited by all types of things, but if you can find any wiggle room to fit in some more purposeful activity into your life and to benefit yourself. It doesn't have to just be making money. It can just be doing something because you enjoy it, even if it's just showing up to locals a couple of times a week and interacting with that community. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking at first. I know it was a little bit daunting for me. I hadn't played paper Pokemon in, maybe a decade at this point before. And so, like, getting back in the rhythm of playing across the table from another person rather than just online it was a little bit daunting. But once you get into it, after that first locals, once you settle in, you get addicted. The feeling comes back. You want to just keep doing it. And that feeling is what I'm able to walk into every day. And because of that, I'm also able to, pursue other things that make me happy, like creating content for this channel. A lot of you longtime viewers probably notice that I kind of go through spurts where, I would be very productive and creative. I would have a string of like 20 videos come out, and then it would just be dead on the channel for months. And those were times where the depression was getting to me, where I was just exhausted. I didn't have the time. And when you're depressed, creativity does not flow. There were a lot of times I would just sit down in front of the computer and go, I want to create YouTube content today. But just my mental state and my physical health, because mental health and physical health are the same. Your brain lives in your body, but it's another thing. But it's just, I couldn't do it. And I had to put some more work into myself in order to get to the point where I got to a day where I was like, I'm going to sit down and do it today, no matter what. I've got the motivation today. I'm full of coffee. I'm going to utilize what I've got going on right now. And that's how you have to get back into it. And so for the creatives out there, people that want to start their own channel, just as another hobby, any hobby you have, pursue it. Even if you have to make yourself do it on certain days, as long as long term it's making you feel fulfilled, it's bringing meaning to your life, it's doing something for you, continue to do it. Keep pressing forward. That's what I did. That's how I ended up where I'm at. I also lucked out with the particular company that I was with. Not long after I started working for them, they were able to open up another larger store in the same town that I live in, and so I was able to move to that larger store, much bigger tournament space, so much stuff. And like I said, I enjoy going into work every day, which is not something that I was feeling at my old job or even the couple of jobs before that. So evaluate your life position, figure out the things that bring you joy, that bring meaning to your life, and increase those as much as possible while decreasing the things that are frustrations, if possible. Some things you can't just get rid of. But that is my now non-professional advice as a mental health worker, but more advice coming from someone that just loves Pokemon, that loves TCGs, that is playing now more than ever, is involved with the communities now more than ever, and that's what it's about, for me at least. those are my personal aspects of meaning that I'm hanging on to, that I'm trying to develop, and I hope that you guys can too. I don't I don't know here at the end of this video what it was actually about, but I've been talking for a while. I'm going to wrap it up here. If you've got comments or anything of the like, toss them down there. I'd love to have a discussion around this topic with you guys. But I'll see you next video. We'll get started on some more decks soon. See you then.